city manager will be announcing the appointment of our next police chief here in Fort Worth. Of course, as you probably know, Chief Krause, his announcement that he was retiring back in August kicked off the process that we've been going through the last few months. And we want to thank Ed for his commitment to the city, his service, and his leadership. Our opportunity to recognize him will come later before he leaves the organization completely. So as you know, we conducted a national search and we engaged residents, other police stakeholders, and included a public forum where we had the finalists speak to the community. At the end, one of the most difficult pieces of that whole process was selecting one of the 6 because we had such a strong list of candidates. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce David Cook, our city manager, who will make the announcement, and then we'll take questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, let me thank Deputy City Manager Jay Chapa for planning and executing a thorough and inclusive process to select our next police chief. As I've said before, this is one of the most important decisions a city manager has to make. Last summer, Chief Krause announced his retirement, and essentially the process started at that point, including the beginning of feedback and input from the community about who should be the next chief and/or how the next chief should be selected. We, the city of Fort Worth, like many other major cities in the United States, are keenly aware of the importance of trust between the community and police, just as we are in providing the assurance of safety for all. Today, more than any time in our history, it is clear that there are demands for a police chief who understands the importance of community engagement. Engagement which may be different in each community. A police chief who understands that trust, transparency, and accountability are inextricably linked. And it is a time where describing the police chief as a humble servant leader is appreciated and accepted. Chief Krause has done a wonderful job as chief in heading us down that path. There will be a time later to talk about and celebrate Chief Krause. Now is about our next leader to continue us down that path. Our next chief communicated to me and others that this is a time of unparalleled opportunity for community partnerships, positive reform, and beneficial change for all. He also committed, along with the city, that the police department will engage with all communities to collectively break through barriers, appreciate one another for our differences, and empower each other through collaboration, communication, and selfless service. And initiating new strategies. He is a listener and humble servant leader. He is a 20-year veteran of the City of Fort Worth Police Department, serving in a multitude of different areas, including patrol, investigations, traffic, field training, and internal affairs. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Fort Worth's next police chief, Neil Noakes. Neil.
Thank you, City Manager Cook, Deputy City Manager Chapa, and thank you, Mayor Price, for being here as well. First and foremost, anything successful I have ever been a part of has not been because of an individual effort. It's always been a team effort. And I want to say first and foremost, it's been the grace of God and the people that He's put around me. A lot of those people are in this room right now. I would not be here if it weren't for the amazing men and women that serve the citizens of Fort Worth every day, the ones that put on the badge and go out into our communities to serve the citizens that expect us to treat them with dignity and respect and professional service. It's also our civilian employees to make sure our department runs the way it should. It's also our volunteers who come and assist us for free. But more is an important part that we may not recognize as much as we should is the part the community plays in our success as a department. And I can say without a doubt, any success I have is not just because of the department, our city leaders, or the mentorship of Chief Krause. It's also because of the partnerships we've been able to form in the community. And I think it's safe to say you're looking at the happiest man in Fort Worth right now. I am absolutely delighted. I'm humbled. I am honored. And I can promise you this, all of us may not agree every day, but as long as we agree to keep coming back to the table, as long as we agree to keep collaborating, as long as we work together, I don't see anything in the city of Fort Worth we can't accomplish together. I will do my best to make sure I don't let anyone down. I will do my best to lead with integrity, to model the behavior we expect from all of our employees, and I will be out in the community much as we've seen Chief Krause do for quite some time. Thank you very much for believing in me, and I look forward to working with anyone and everyone who wants to work with the Fort Worth Police Department. Thank you very, very much. We can take some questions now. Yes, sir.
Chief, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Sort of a two-part question. What would you say to a young black man in Fort Worth, and I know you're no stranger to all the racial tension and all that years, a young black man who's afraid of police, he's known as the enemy, he's afraid to take his little gun to the traffic stop and then shout at harm. And the flip side of that, what would you say to the officers out there who sincerely believe that the city doesn't have the back to do their job, and that they're being set the gas on every single day?
First part of the question. Anyone in the city of Fort Worth, your question specifically, African-American male, that might not trust the police. I understand that there's a reason for many people to not trust police because of historical things that have happened. We're talking many years back, generations back, that have caused a division between the police and the community. There are things that have happened in the not so distant future that can cause some division between the police and the community. What I say is that every member of our diverse communities in the city of Fort Worth matters. Everyone should be a part of this conversation. And for that young man specifically, I would like to buy him coffee. I'd like to buy him lunch. I would like to meet with him one-on-one. It's one thing to hear me say this looking at a camera. It's another thing to hear me say it looking at him from across the table. It's much harder to have a negative opinion or even hate when you're close up. It's easy when you keep people at a distance. So my plan is to bring people in close. As far as the officers go, thank you so much for the work you do every single day. In my opinion, the Fort Worth Police Department is the best police department anywhere, and it's not even close. No matter how good any agency is, it can be better. And I think one of the things that makes us a great agency is we know we can be better. The officers that are out there, our civilian employees, our volunteers, they all are working together to make things happen. As chief, I want to be someone who will listen to the officers much as Chief Krause did. I want to make sure that they're appreciated and that the only time they hear from the chief is not just because they're in trouble, it's because they did something right. So for our officers, I would want them to know that I did 8 years in patrol before ever beginning to promote. I'm not that far removed from my time in patrol. I remember what it's like. They are being seen, they're being heard, and I'd like to come jump in a car with them from time to time. Thank you, sir.
Chief, I know that you were one of, I believe, 3 internal candidates for this job. Have you had a chance to speak with the other 2 internal finalists?
We had a wide array of initial candidates. I didn't know all of them, but I did know the finalists, the 6. And within those 6, there were 2. What I will say, the process was obviously done well because it was a strong field of candidates. We had some very impressive people from right here in Fort Worth. We had some from nearby, some a little further away. I will say specifically candidates that applied for this position that are with the Fort Worth Police Department have all shown their support. They've all come and told me they'll do everything they can to make sure The police chief is successful because for our department to be successful, the chief has to be successful, and they all care about our department. So they have also shown great support, and I believe they'll be part of a great team.
Deputy Chief, you stepped
Yes,
into
sir.
this position knowing the department very well. Do you see changes that need to be made immediately, or do you continue down the path that has really been set over the last 6 months?
There's change that will need to happen with any organization, but I really think for the most part, with what Chief Krause has done, the course that he has set us on, we're going in a good direction. It can be fine-tuned, sure, but I don't believe it's a situation where we have to completely change things from top to bottom. There's a culture we want to make sure we instill in Fort Worth about treating people with dignity and respect. A culture of transparency, accountability, and true, not just community engagement, but community inclusion. It's one thing to engage with someone, it's another thing to include them in the process. But I feel I'm very fortunate to follow Chief Krause in one way and another way. It's going to be hard to follow in his shoes because he has set a great example and put us in a very good direction.
Two of the biggest issues with the department that you've touched on at the forum were minority hires, the Citizens Review Board. How do you plan on going about both of those?
As far as recruiting, we've actually done much better as of late because of a very innovative program that was put in place by Assistant Chief Julie Swearingen. Be the change. She is challenging people in the community who are not happy with the way things are going. It's one thing to say something about it, it's another thing to step up and do something about it. She's been very intentional about engaging on a personal level with people in the community who are applying to make sure not only they're ready for the process, but to make sure they follow through with the process. We're going to continue on that program, maybe even expand it to bring in more community involvement, but she has definitely led the way with a very innovative program they're very proud of. And what was the second part of that
Citizens
question?
Review Board.
Oh, Citizens Review Board. One thing we talked about a little bit during the process leading up to the selection of the chief of police was civilian oversight. And the truth of the matter is it's coming whether we want to see it or not. My plan is to be a part of the process. If this is something that's going to affect the police department, and it is, I believe it's incumbent upon us as the police department and our executive team to be a part of the discussions to hopefully find a model along with Kim Neal from the Office of the Police Oversight Monitor to make sure we don't just take a program or a model that we see in another city, but we find one that works for Fort Worth.
Chief, we sort of have a rare trifecta going in DFW right now with two police chiefs in Dallas, Arlington, and Fort Worth. I doubt you've had a chance in the last hour or two to reach out to those chiefs, but do you plan to reach out to them? Is there anything you can do with sort of a regional crime-fighting approach with your chiefs in the city?
With that question, I will be reaching out. DFW Metroplex is fourth largest metropolitan area in the country. It's massive. And the three largest cities have just picked new chiefs. In my opinion, at least in my career, the most turbulent time in policing. We have an opportunity now to do some amazing things, to look for that positive reform, to look for community connections. And I think if we do it on a regional rather than just city level, if we will be willing to get out of our silos and work together, and I believe those chiefs will. A little bit I know about them, they seem very innovative, very forward-thinking, and I look forward to meeting them. But it's not just Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington. I believe the North Texas region has got some of the best policing going on in the country, just most people don't know about it. There's amazing things going on in Grand Prairie, in Lake Worth, in Burleson. There are things going on all over the area, and if we all work together and share those ideas that are working, I think it makes all of us stronger.
In kind of that same vein, Fort Worth wasn't alone in seeing a spike in homicides last year. When you talk about violent crime, what is step one for trying to address that?
Step one is realizing it's maybe a national trend, yes, and that is true, but the citizens of Fort Worth are worried about the Fort Worth trend. They're not worried about what's happening across the country. They want to make sure their own neighborhoods, their own businesses, their own schools are safe. So the first step is continuing with the good work we've been doing in addressing violent crime. One thing we will not do is enter our neighborhoods as an occupying force to take over. We're going to enter in a spirit of collaboration, working with our citizens, and focus specifically on the areas and the people who have the need, not entire neighborhoods. We're starting a new non-fatal shooting response team that will address our non-fatal shooting specifically, because oftentimes the only difference between a homicide and a non-fatal shooting is a little bit of luck. So once we address those, we will actually be addressing what would be some of our would-be homicide actors as well. It comes down to focused deterrence, which again is not a zero-tolerance approach to a neighborhood. It's about a strategic and surgical approach, only dealing with the people we need to.
What do you believe set you apart and ultimately put you in this position?
I'm not special. I am absolutely not special. I'm surrounded by people who are. And if there's anything about me, it's just the good fortune of knowing some amazing people. And I'm talking about from birth. As I said before, it's been the grace of God and the people He put around me. I've got an amazing family. I've had amazing support, not just with my family at home, but my Fort Worth family as well. And I don't even mean just Fort Worth PD. And let me back up. I don't ever want to say just Fort Worth PD. But I have had amazing support from within Fort Worth PD, from other agencies in the area, and from other departments within the city of Fort Worth. Even if we're not all doing the same exact job, we are all after the same mission and vision. We want Fort Worth to be the most livable, best managed city in the nation. We want to build a strong community together. And we can only do that if we have safe neighborhoods, if we have great parks, great libraries, great rec centers for our kids. So if there's anything that sets me apart, it's the people who are around me.
Just outside of policing for a second, to people that just want to know more about you, how would you describe yourself? Introduce yourself a little bit to people.
One of my proudest accomplishments, I'm a husband and a father. Very proud to announce that I have amazing, overwhelming support from my family. My parents, sisters, and grandparents have always been supportive. I love the city because of what the city has given to me. I've got education from Tarleton and TCU right here in Fort Worth. I've got to know so many people in the neighborhood, and I guess that's one of the main things I would say about me is my willingness to connect. I want to connect with people on a personal level whenever and wherever I can. There's no way we as police officers can do the job we need to do alone, but the citizens can't do it either. And what I believe I bring is a connectivity, and that's what I hope to do, is bridge that gap between the community and the Fort Worth Police Department. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Chief, just real quick, when does your promotion take effect?
He started.
You said he is now.
He is now the police chief.
Tell me, Governor. I did indeed.